So I turned 30 today. Oh boy. So I have no agenda for this video. The idea here is to talk to my younger self and reflect on the fact that somehow it's 2026 and I was born in 1996, and that 2005 when Star Wars Episode 3 came out, that was 21 years ago. So I was 9. And so a kid who is 9 today would be born in 2017. And so, I mean, that means to them, a 9-year-old today, born in 2017, Star Wars Episode 3 came out 12 years before they were born. That's like a movie that came out in 1984 for me, which, I mean, a movie that came out in 1984 felt absolutely ancient. And I didn't watch any of them for years until, my 20s, essentially, outside of like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And so just to put that into perspective, it's really crazy, the fact that we're here right now. And I mean, one thing in life is that, you can't predict how life's going to go. And I mean, when I was 20, I was way overweight. I was probably 220 pounds, and I'm down below 150 now. So I'm down like 70 pounds. And at the time I was a sport management major in college and didn't know what in the world I was going to be doing with that. And if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that you can't know what the best thing for your future is going to be. My 20-year-old self had a vision that he desperately believed was the best vision for his life. And I look back at it now, and if that vision would have happened, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And who am I to judge whether that's better or worse? But what I can say is that my life today is incredibly fulfilling, and every moment I'm incredibly grateful for, even though essentially some of the things, essentially nothing that my 18 or 19-year-old self thought was going to happen essentially happened. I thought I was either going to be an NFL general manager or a famous YouTuber. And well, as you can tell from the subscriber count on this channel, that did not happen. Well, I did get the chance to do YouTube full time for a little while, thanks to basically pivoting my sport management degree into an esports career. It wasn't meant to be for the long run. And so while those things, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity, and those things made me who I am today, part of my story. My ego in 2017, 2018 thought that my life was going to go in a certain path, and it knew that was the best path for me. But the arrogance of the ego is that it can't see outside of itself, and it can't see what the optimal path is. The optimal path only emerges as you take one step forward at a time. And I had absolutely no way of grasping that for a long, long time. And I don't know if anyone really can until they, quote unquote, suffer the consequences of thinking they know what the best path is and trying to will it into existence no matter the cost. And that can be extremely tiring, exhausting, and unfulfilling. And without a doubt, you're going to burn out at some point. And for me, while I did have some, success in one niche of esports and YouTube or whatever, there was a point where I didn't feel like the future was there. And if my ego wouldn't have let it go, I would still be grinding away and would have missed out on all the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost would have been absolutely astronomically large, because I would have missed out on all of the growth that happened by giving up on that career and giving up on my ego's past dreams. So the beautiful thing about life is that you don't know what you don't know, and that the best thing for you could be is literally something that you have no ability to predict currently. And so the only path forward is to let go of your expectations of what the best thing for you is. And that is not easy to do. Generally, you don't just let go of it. You essentially get forced to let go of it. And then that is the surrender moment where you're like, whatever, I'm just going to give up. And that is essentially what happened to me a few years ago when I was trying to do crypto trading full time, and I was having success and I felt like I was willing it into existence. And then I basically blew out the entire account. And, either you can blame people for it, you can blame the economy, you can blame politicians, you can blame bad trading advice that you saw online or whatever, or you can take full responsibility for it and just say it is what it is. Maybe it was supposed to happen for some reason. And I really don't think that's like a mystical, spiritual woo-woo, that it doesn't have to be that way. Because, in quantum physics, we know that photons explore all paths. Physicists don't necessarily love saying that. All paths within a range of outcomes that is required by the current measurement context. But broadly, it searches all possible paths, even if their weighting or their probability is 0. And so there may be essentially 0% probability paths, but technically they are being considered. All of that to say is a photon explores all possible paths, and the most probable path, or the path of least action, more technically, is the one that emerges. And so in that sense, water flows downhill. Water follows also the path of least resistance down the hill. It flows in the direction that it must. And in that way, life is very similar in that regard. You kind of have to just flow in the path. But that doesn't mean that you have no agency. And this, of course, comes back down to free will and all of these things, which, the work we've been doing recently gets more into that. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that trying to force your will upon the world is the less optimal outcome. All you can really do each day is show up with no expectation and put forth your max effort. And the beauty of that is that if you actually let go of the expectation, it enables you or increases your ability to put forth more effort. And so you'll actually see compounding gains towards something. You won't know what you're headed towards. And so the difficulty about this is that you've built your entire motivational structure on carrot and stick. So you see the goal and you must go get it. But there's actually a way to rewire your brain to be extremely excited about showing up, being present, and putting forth full effort in that present moment. And there is a way to, I'm experiencing it currently. Every day, I show up and I'm working 10, 12, 14 hours a day sometimes, going to the gym, listening to audiobooks while I'm at the gym. It's not because I feel like I have to. It's because I feel like I get to. I get to wake up every day and put forth full effort, and I don't know where the path is going to be. And something about the ego is the ego wants to constrain possibilities. It wants to make life ordered and predictable and easy and navigable. But that actually limits the paths that you can take. And so when we talk about this photon exploring all possible paths, or the water flowing downhill, the ego wants to try to predict what the path of least action is. He wants to predict the easiest path or the path of success. But the problem is the ego doesn't have enough information and enough computational capacity and energy and power to actually do that. It has no ability to predict. And it can't predict outside of the things that it doesn't know. So if it doesn't know things, if it can't if it doesn't have the data, it can't know those things. You can't know about quantum physics till you actually learn about quantum physics. You can't know how to do a skill until you do the skill and are taught or learn the skill in some way. That applies to all of life. And so the ego wants to put up barriers, and it perceives danger based off of your core beliefs. And then this stems from your core identity, your current state, yourself. And so my past self was so absorbed with the results and actions and achievements, and my core identity was based around these actions and achievements, that once the YouTube channel has 100,000 subscribers, I'll be happy. Or then I'll be successful. And then when I have that, then I can do all these other things. It's so obvious. This is what's going to work. And here's how I do it. And okay, yeah, like those goals and things can generate action. And that's good. I mean, action itself if you have a goal, the goal should be to act, to do, to be in the moment and with your full effort. And from that, results will emerge. But the results were never the goal. The action was the goal. And when you let go of the outcome, when you let go of the expectations, and when you let go of your core identities around achievement, because to let go of the outcomes means to let go of the achievement itself. But that's extremely difficult to do because your core identity is built around achievement. So what is your ego going to do? Your ego is going to defend your core beliefs, your core identity. And if your identity is around who I am as a person, who I am about my beliefs, my achievements, my actions, well then when the ego feels like that's threatened, it's going to raise the alarms. And what alarms does the ego have to raise? Well, it can be physiological. So your heart rate, your hands are going to get sweaty, your armpits are sweaty, all of the signs of anxiety, of anxiousness, of feeling like you're under threat. Your chest will tighten up. You're going to feel tense. All of these things that first you generate this anxiety response. Then depending on your basis or what baseline you're in, which the book calls the adaptive programs, but like it's the baseline through which your ego responds and defends your beliefs. Then maybe it might go try to generate action. Like, okay, well now I need to go remove the barrier. So let's say that someone wants to, you have like in a YouTube context, for example, you have a competitor on YouTube who posts similar content to you. Well, then you could put out a hit piece and try to ruin his reputation or like dismember him on social media and try to, prove why he is a terrible content creator. Or you could do the opposite and you could just say, I'm going to double down and be even better. And that generates action. So that, that's how your ego is fighting this threat to your identity. So it's generating action from negative emotion. But that's extremely expensive and exhausting. And it's not sustainable. I lived that on YouTube and in my past careers. My goodness, is it tiring? And you have to check out and you have to then have your alone time and you have to, feel like you go to bed and your eyes hurt and your body hurts and you're tight and tense. And you wake up and you start again. You're going to battle. And every day feels like that. But it doesn't have to feel like that. But the ego is terrified of letting go of course, its core identity, because if it believes that you have to achieve. And if you achieve through these negative emotions, if you are always driving yourself through negative emotion, well, how is it going to let go of negative emotion? Because the negative emotion is what drives you to achieve in the first place. So why would you let go of it? So it becomes circular. So the only way is to short circuit the system, and essentially by removing the context in which your ego currently operates. And you have to be willing to say, I've suffered enough. Time to let go and see what happens. And from that, then a new configuration of yourself will emerge. One that requires less energy and will slowly but surely readjust to a new way of organizing oneself and one's emotions and motivations. And so that's been a process that I've been going through. This is a very broad explanation of it, but the process that I've personally experienced over the last 15 years, and especially last 10, last 6 especially. And the weight loss journey was one aspect of that. Finally, when I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the gym, not because I have to get, in shape or fit or whatever, because I'm just going to I'm a healthy person now. So think about what happened there is that I changed my core belief from seeing like, oh, I'm not someone who works out. I'm fat, to then saying I'm a healthy person who goes to the gym. I'm an athlete. And so what does that do? It reorganizes. Now my identity is about being a healthy person. So the ego is reorganizing around this belief. So this changes the amount of effort required to partake in action. And now suddenly the water's flowing downhill. The path of least action, the path the photon is taking, is now much easier, and the water's flowing in that direction naturally. So now it becomes easy to go to the gym. It becomes easier to eat healthy. It becomes easier to make the right choices to be healthy. And this all emerges from that. And these are all things that I've begun to notice over the last few years through this journey. And so someone knocked on my door, so I had to go take care of that real quick. But I've gotten the question a few times, like, well, what advice would you give your younger self, someone who's like 18 or 20 nowadays? And if you were that age now, and I was like, well, I mean, first of all, the world's a lot different than it was just, 10 years ago or whatever. I mean, 2020 changed everything when it comes to economics, the economic situation that people grow up in today. Obviously, things are a little bit different now. But when it comes to being a human, and when it comes to how one has to operate in the world, when it comes to how we have to be and develop and work and do and live and create, those things themselves will never change. So, first of all, the one thing that I absolutely think that is fundamental to experience is to find places for quiet. Whether that's a walk. I mean, for me, implementing walks into my life changed everything. And that's not, it doesn't even have to be like a quiet walk per se, but for me, what it was walking while listening to podcasts and listening to audiobooks and listening to lectures on YouTube, learning while walking. Because something about your unconscious can sense where you're headed next. Carl Jung clearly understood and intuited this in all of his work. The unconscious has a power to sense the direction that may be more optimal for you. And from a quantum perspective, this makes sense. That the non-self-referential thinking parts of your brain, when you quiet your self-referential thinking, this enables your brain to search a wider search space. But that only happens unconsciously. And so insights arise, these ahas arise, these little pulls towards inspiration, these inspirations, these creative drives arise from that unconscious place, from where the self, the conscious thinking, logical, linear self doesn't exist. And I mean, Carl Jung called that side of our brain the logos, and then there's the eros, the feeling or the sensing aspect of us. In modern cognitive science, this would be system 1, which is the fast parallel thinking insight side of our brain, and then system 2, the linear language logic side of our brain. And in the work that we've been doing with Jack, this would be quantum and classical. Quantum fast thinking, obviously system 1 aspect, and then classical system 2. And all of this to say is that your unconscious can then search this wider search space. As we talked about the photon, finding optimal paths through the interference pattern, or through the interference, considering all paths, weighting by interference, by action, and then the path of least action manifests through the interference pattern. And our life operates very similarly. but our ego wants to impose its direction upon the path. But the reality is that the unconscious is already calculating optimal paths, and that this manifests to you through feeling and intuition. And so my younger self was so logical, I quite literally eliminated the word feel from my vocabulary. I told myself, feeling is irrelevant. Why would I feel? It creates bias. Everyone's blinded by their feelings. Why not just through logic, think through things, and then weigh all options and make the most logical decision? Clearly, that's effective in some cases, and it's called for in some cases. But in one's life, when it comes to what the rest of my life will look like or what the optimal paths may be, the unconscious is actually what's better, more optimal, or better at finding the more optimal path. But this cannot be logically thought through. You have to take one step into the darkness, metaphorically, of course, and see what emerges. And so this is what I mean is that in life, some of the biggest, most exciting moments of my life were when, for example, in early 2025, I was like, you know what? I've been thinking about this idea for a TV show for a long time. I'm just going to write it. And in writing that, a domino effect it was actually at the end of 2024, a domino effect of things happened essentially that led to big insights and the book and the papers and all of these things. And so I could have never predicted that. It would have been impossible to predict. But following that little glimmer, that little fire burning in the distance in my mind, this little whisper of like, that would be fun. Just write it. Why not just take a few hours per day and then just like lock in flow state? Don't judge it. Just write it for fun. Who cares? Maybe no one will ever read it. Why does it matter? For some reason, I think it'd be fun. So I'm gonna do it. And so for me, that was writing a TV script. But for you, it might be anything. It could be developing a video game. It could be writing a book. It could be making a YouTube channel, making YouTube videos, creating art, creating music, creating a business, giving a speech, going back to your high school and doing a public talk, or having a conversation with someone that you haven't had a conversation with in a long time and you thought, oh, that'd be fun. It could literally be anything. You don't know exactly, but this little sense of like, that could be fun, or that's interesting. But then your ego is going to immediately come in and be like, oh, whoa, no. Not needed. Unnecessary, waste of time, totally irrelevant. Don't do that. And so the ego always comes in, kills the original idea, and then you're left with nothing. You're left with keep doing the thing you're currently doing because that's the most logical thing to do, obviously. Which, again, has logical basis potentially. It has the highest ROI for your current configuration of yourself. But how can you know what the highest ROI is? You can't possibly know what the opportunity cost is of what you're currently doing. So why not explore a little bit? What's the problem that could possibly happen here? What's the worst thing that could happen? And so that's been something that's really been the operating mode over the last, especially 18 months. And that's been awesome. And before that, it was all about expanding the horizons, saying yes to things that I normally would have never said yes to, which is why when I found out that Germany, you can get a free master's degree in Germany, anyone can. I was like, what? Free master's degrees in Germany for anyone? Awesome. So that opened up that door, and I was able to go to Germany, which then ended up being why I was able to move to Puerto Rico for a while. And now I'm back here in the States. And so, not only that, but then changing your environment, that itself is unbelievably valuable because your ego builds up a meaning structure around your current environment. So for me, that was Nebraska. I grew up in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska. And there's so much meaning attached to every street, every building. I mean, the house that I grew up in, the house that I lived in after, the second house we moved to, the school I went to with all my friends back home. There's this massive meaning structure that your ego operates within. And when you're there or when you're in that environment, your ego, how you can feel like you're put into a box. That is that feeling manifesting in your experience. The ego has built a meaning structure around you that entangles your beliefs and your beliefs about yourself with the environment you're in. So removing yourself from the environment can enable you to search things you never searched before. And that will change you. And if you don't impose your egoic beliefs about what that change should be, something entirely different could manifest, and that could be beautiful. And so that's been the process of self-development for myself over the last, 6 years, especially. I moved from Nebraska after COVID in 2021 to Indianapolis with a friend. And then from there, that was when a lot of the big breakthroughs about myself began to happen. And that enabled kind of the insights to move to Germany. And then so much more happened in Germany. And then lo and behold, domino, here we are. But again, like that comes from removing oneself from an environment, exploring new configurations of who you may be. And then from there, something emerges. And that's exciting because you don't know. It's like being on a roller coaster. And this is where engaging authentically with life is so valuable, because if you try to put on this social mask of your ego in the same way tries to control people's opinions of you. And so back in the day, I was a YouTuber and I was trying to control everyone's opinion of me. I needed to overly edit my videos. I needed to make sure the editing was perfect, that I was always right, that I looked smart in the videos, because if I don't look smart, then people aren't going to watch the videos. And that also reflected in all my social interactions with friends and family and new people. The ego is trying to control all of those situations as well. And so that's first of all incredibly expensive. And so no wonder every social situation feels draining, and no wonder you're like, I need to go home, because I'm perceiving so much threat, so much. I have to exert so much energy to control the scenarios that I'm in, that it's just easier to be at home by myself as a YouTuber. Why do I need to talk to people? And so that itself was a massive belief system about the need for control, not just of my future, but of the environments I'm in, including the social context, and then the opinions the opinions of that other people have about me. So I need to position myself correctly. I need to say the right things. So then everything feels like if I don't say the right thing, there's all this pressure. So now I'm going to sweat. I'm going to have social anxiety because if I don't say the right thing, I might die. And that's literally how my body was reacting. And so no wonder I would have sweaty armpits, and I would always be self-conscious about my sweaty armpits and about, all these things in contexts where I didn't know people. And so either I wanted to make sure I was going to social events where I knew everyone. So if I knew everyone well, then I can predict what's going to happen. It's pretty safe. But if there was someone I didn't know, let's avoid that. So I only ever hung out with people I knew, which again reinforces the context that your ego already knows, and it keeps you in this box. And so these are all part of the quote unquote problem. It's that the ego wants control of your environment. It wants to control your future. It wants to control your environment. It wants to be able to predict that you're always going to be safe. But safe is only relative to your current identity. And so because my identity was an achievement identity, I needed to control everyone's opinions about me to increase my perceived odds of succeeding. Because I was a YouTuber, I need people to think cool of me, because if they don't think about me that way, they're not going to watch my content. And so if they don't watch my content, then I'm not a YouTuber, and then I fail. And then who am I if I fail? I may as well die. And that's literally how the ego's operating there. And so all I have to say is, there's so much more to life than that. And you can't know it from inside the current context in which you live. And that may be true for me even right now. There could be an unbelievable future life that I can't even imagine. And that's exciting. But the only way to find it is by removing the mask that the ego wants to put on you and actually experiencing the world for what it really is and letting the world impact you and not the ego's mask. Because the ego wants to put on the mask so that, they're not saying that about me. They're saying that about the persona of me. The persona, which is a Jungian term. The persona is the outward facing version of you that isn't exactly you. It's what you want people to think about you. And the persona is, every YouTuber has a persona. The persona is who they are on camera. Hey guys, Salvation Elite here. Hey everyone, welcome back to Salvation Elite. And today we're gonna be talking about, Call of Duty and Optic and and it's like I was a little, you lean forward, you I don't even know. I feel like you could probably sense it. Like you literally lean forward, you increase the tone of your voice. It's not exactly you, it's someone else. And then I'm able to highly edit the videos so that it positions me in the perfect way to look smart and intelligent. And I can hide all my mistakes and my stutters and my ums, and I can have the right camera lens. So I looked skinnier on the camera back then. So if I have a wide camera and I'm positioned in the middle, I look skinnier. Oh, that's a huge win. And so all of those things were like these little things. I can control that. I can control this. I can control that. But then what happens when you lose control, Like at some point you build this castle you can't escape. And that's one heck of a problem. All of this to say is, and I could keep rambling on forever if you'd like, but at some point, what's left? Taking action, being, becoming, and one step at a time, and following the little whispers, the little instincts that you may have, the thought that arises, ooh, that'd be fun, before your ego comes in and says no. And that might be the next creative venture. It might be your next project, your next business, your next music, your next creative act, your next painting, your next song, your next whatever. Might be something. And showing up each day and putting forth your best effort and making little changes that have such a massive difference over time. And and if you're younger, you have a lot of time. It may not feel like it. It may feel like you're behind. Trust me, you're not. There are such small changes you can do that will have such compounding effects. And for me, it was walks. It was going to the gym. It was cutting out sugary drinks. Those three things alone, if you just go to the gym, you start 3 times a week. Your only goal is to get there. Get there 3 times a week. First of all, change your identity. You can be a healthy person. What is the difference between a bodybuilder who goes to the gym every single day and you? It's the fact that they go to the gym every single day. And then 10 years later, literally the only difference between a bodybuilder and you, or the perfect physique and you, is going to the gym and time. And the beautiful thing is that you're young Josh. You're 20, you're 18. Dude, I'm 30. You've got like 10 or 12 years, dude. I didn't start lifting consistently until 2022. So I've only been lifting for 4 years. Old Josh, dude, you could be lifting for 6 to 8 more years than me right now, and you would be absolutely yoked. And that's not the point. But to you, that might be the point right now, and that's fine. But just know that the difference is actually just being there. The difference is literally going and doing. And when you go and do, eventually you'll be. Or eventually you'll become as you're being. Because when you're in the gym, lifting the weights and progressively lifting heavier weights will get you to that point eventually. And if you cut out sugary drinks and you walk for 30 minutes a day after dinner, go outside. That's a pretty simple rule. You put down your fork, you put it in the sink, and then before sitting down again, you just go straight outside. That's all you have to do. Go outside, walk 5 minutes, start there. These little habits compound over time. And then find ways to substitute out. Find any book that sounds interesting. Any book, audiobook that sounds interesting. Put it on. Find a lecture on YouTube. Could be from anyone. There are tons of lectures on YouTube. Put it on. If there's any book that's caught your interest in the last 5 years, go on Amazon, buy it. And think about your ego is going to try to find excuses. Money is going to be the classic excuse. But the reality is for example, right now, I'm eating chicken 6 times a week and then Chipotle once. And so I buy a family pack of all these chicken, which is it's like 5.5 pounds of chicken for $11 or $11.50. It's like $2 something a pound. And I have 1 chicken breast per day with a frozen bag, 1.5 frozen bags of vegetables. And then you could throw in rice if you'd like. I usually have carbs in other ways. But for example, that's my dinner every single day. So it's like almost nothing. It costs nothing. Like 1 chicken breast. There's 6 chicken breasts and it cost me, $11. So it's $1.85 per chicken breast or something like that. And then the bags of frozen vegetables are like $1. So my dinners are $3.85. Okay, that's like $95 per month in food. I'm guaranteeing you, like the average person watching this video is spending so much more than that on dinners per month. I mean, it's got to be a lot more than that. And so all of that to say is you can find ways to, if you're investing in other things and like pleasures or like, you're going to concerts or you're buying video games or you're buying sports memorabilia or sports cards or you're, paying for a lot of movies per month or whatever it is, or Netflix and HBO Max and all the 4K versions and whatever. You're probably burning through a lot of random cash per month and you just don't even notice. And so for me, it was like cutting down on that, substituting it with walking and those things. And this happened over time. It wasn't like I just did this all right off the rip. What I'm saying is you have a plethora of options and you can change. And when you change your core identity, it changes the action cost of the actions themselves, and the water starts flowing downhill. And then you can consider ways in which you could actually even further increase this ability for the water to flow downhill by finding ways to invest in these new actions. And so for me, it was like, well, instead of buying the cheap Planet Fitness membership, you buy the $30 or $35 a month membership, but then you get the massage beds at Planet Fitness. And then that gets me excited to go do that, because then after I'm done my workout, I can go on the massage bed, listen to an audiobook for 10, 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And like, it's such an incredibly relaxing experience. And I'm getting that now while going to the gym. That's awesome. Some gyms have pools if you love swimming, stuff like that, like basketball. You can find ways to make it fun for yourself. And that's just for working out. Obviously, you could do this for writing or for creativity, for painting, for whatever it is, the habits that you want to build, for sports and whatever's calling you, filmmaking. There's a lot of ways you can make short films or write a movie script, and you just have to commit to doing it. Like for me, writing the movie script or writing the show pilot, I have 2 episodes fully written with a full story Bible. It's a sci-fi prestige, like a high prestige drama. And the key was just consistency. When you start writing and you start getting in this flow state of the story starts to just unfold. The creative muse just unleashes itself. And that's the key, is finding these flow states and knowing that reducing your thinking about yourself, reducing how much this matters and being present in the moment will enable the flow state even further. So all of this to say, I mean, I could go on forever about all of these things, but life is the small choices that one makes and the small habits that one builds over time. And for me, and the thing is that over a 10-year period, they compound, and you can definitely see that. And I avidly 100% believe that one's intelligence can be increased. Science says it can't, or it's very hard to at least, but that's because science works on averages. And at the end of the day, individuals aren't averages. While it's easy to collect all human behavior into averages, any individual person has a lot of freedom in the informational landscape of this world. And that we have a lot that we can do. And for me, things that I thought I would never be able to understand anything about quantum physics or about neuroscience or about really science at large, mathematics. But what I realized was I was missing fundamental ideas that I just somehow missed, like in high school or junior high, and never developed a framework for understanding them. And then when I started actually spending literally just a few hours, and what is like 2 hours in the grand scheme of things? I mean, how many 4-hour Call of Duty sessions have I had in my life? 5-hour Call of Duty sessions I had in my life versus how many 5-hour reading sessions have I had in my life? It's a sad ratio, very sad. But again, that made me who I am. So who is to say otherwise, And this is the thing. We don't know what's better, but the opportunity cost is real, whether for better or for worse. And so you can start shifting these ratios a little bit, and then over time, it will compound. So that's all I have to say. 30 years old it's really crazy. I mean, it is just a number at the end of the day. And I mean, because of the weight loss and because of the new habits, I mean, I feel younger. I'm not kidding. I feel so much younger than I did when I was 24. So 6 years have passed. I was like 220 pounds in 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. I was over 220 probably at some point, maybe 2018 or 20, somewhere in there. And then I measured myself. I was like 212 somewhere like in end of 2020. And that's when I started losing weight. But I definitely was over that at some point. I wasn't weighing myself because why would you weigh yourself? And so then I cut out sugary drinks. And then from there, the weight loss started happening through diet and very simple diet stuff. Just skip out on breakfast, have a meal replacement, have a big dinner, don't snack past like 8 p.m. and stuff like that. Anyway, all of that to say is that those actions shifted and that changed the landscape. And then now here I am all these years later, and like I feel younger than I was 6 years ago. The creative output that can happen now on a day-to-day basis is just absolutely insane. The comprehension of big ideas that I can now have was incomprehensible, unimaginable to me. I mean, even just a few years ago, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, but especially like 5 or 6 years ago. And so it feels like I'm literally just getting started. So I can't imagine what the next 10 years will be, the next 20 years will be. And I'm just really excited. I'm really excited. And hopefully it helps some of you guys out there in some way or another, or it connects with you guys in some way. And so if you're interested in kind of the bases of what that's looked like for us, I mean, check out the other videos on this channel. There's a lot going on. So connect with me, drop me a comment down below or at me on X or something. I'm sure I'd love to talk and help you through the path, baby. So talk to you very soon. Thanks for hanging. Bye.